Hello, everyone. This is Professor Brookins, and I just want to walk you through some study skills that I think will be very useful for you in this course. So please watch this video, take notes, and email me if you have any questions. I highly suggest that this is the first thing that you do after you read the syllabus. So, what are we going to do? First, we're going to talk about how to put yourself in the right mindset to study. Then we're going to talk about how we can succeed in the classroom. And finally, we'll actually discuss what studying truly is. So let's jump right ahead and get into the right mindset. So the next few slides are going to have some statements, and I want you to think about whether or not you believe that they're true or false. So forget everything you know about intellect and guess true or false for the following items. Top students are only successful because of their natural intellect. This is actually false. We find that top students are often successful because of things like conscientiousness, organization, and persistence. The best example is a personal one. This is actually true. When you're trying to remember something, it's always useful to relate it to something that you already know. So personal examples are great ways for you to integrate knowledge in content. The best way to remember something important in the text is to highlight it. This actually is not true, and we'll talk about this later. Highlighting and underlining things in the text is honestly not useful, especially nowadays when we have digital text that we use so often. There are better ways for you to actually remember information, and we'll talk about that later. Left brain and right brain people learn differently. So this also is false. There actually is no empirical scientific evidence to show that people who are quote unquote left brain learn completely differently than people who are quote unquote right brain. The more general knowledge you have, the better you will be at retaining new information. So this is true. The more you know, the easier it is for you to learn and retain information. People have different learning styles that make it hard for them to learn any other way. This is false. So while learning styles are very popular and while learning styles may be something that students can use to help make learning more enjoyable and to increase their engagement, there is no learning style that prevents people from learning information. Reading a chapter all at once is the best way to retain information. So this is false. You want to break your reading up into smaller bits so you can actually digest them. We'll talk about this a bit later as well. So some of the items that we talked about that were false, those align with a fixed mindset. And a fixed mindset says, well, hey, you either got it or you don't, and there's not much you can do about it. People who have these fixed mindsets avoid challenges. They give up rather easily. They don't persist. And they believe that intelligence and talent is God given, and there's no possible way for someone to improve upon it. On the other hand, a growth mindset is a mindset that says with the proper effort, people can achieve and they can do well. So people with growth mindsets are inspired by others' success, they learn from failure, and they attempt to do things again. So how can we as individuals succeed in the classroom? My first suggestion is to adopt this growth mindset. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Know that with the adequate amount of effort, you can perform well in nearly any academic subject that you attempt to. So when we're in the classroom, it's very important for you to know how to take notes. And this is when you're reading, when you're attending lectures, when you're either watching a presentation or reading PowerPoint slides, you should always be taking notes. A lot of times people feel, okay, I'm looking, I'm paying attention, I'm absorbing all this information. When in reality, our memories are not that reliable, and we need to take notes that we can refer back to later. So, the first thing you want to do when you're taking notes, especially with your reading, is to start with an outline. The great thing about your homework assignments is that they're based on the reading objectives, the learning objectives from your textbook, which means that they're in order of how the actual textbook is organized. So your homework is an outline. Read over all of the homework questions before you begin to do the homework. This is going to put you in the right mindset. Ultimately, your homework assignments are designed to become a study guide. So these homework assignments can help you organize your notes as well. Secondly, when you're watching presentations and lectures, you need to write down what you hear, not only what you see. This is a mistake that people make very often. They attempt to write down everything that they see on the PowerPoint, but oftentimes instructors are using presentations and PowerPoints as an outline for themselves to remember what to say to the audience, right? PowerPoint slides would be overwhelmingly bulky if we wrote down everything that we wanted people to know. So please, please, please be mindful to listen and write down what you hear as well as what you see on slides. Keep it classic, right? You do not need to have some sort of fancy note taking approach. Pen and paper works best. So we often find that when you are physically writing, it actually helps you to retain information. You don't have to worry about having all different types of colors. Of course, if you take notes and later you organize your notes in a very visually appealing way, this is going to be you interacting with the material again, and actually is going to help you retain information. But when you're in the midst of actually writing your notes, get the information down, make sure things make sense, and you can always go back and reorganize your notes. Stay organized, write neatly, make sure your notes are legible. You would hate to have to return to your notes when you're doing the homework assignment or when you're studying for a test and not even understand what you wrote down. Then, as you're taking notes in the reading, during presentations or lectures, write down your questions in the margin. Don't let a question escape you. Write it down right away because that question is a connection that you're making, and that connection is going to help you retain the actual content. Think critically as you're taking notes. As you're getting information, start to try to make connections, right? Start to be critical about what you're hearing and what you're being told, and start to think about what it means, right? Do you believe it's valid, etc. Ask yourself these types of questions as you're taking your notes and write down your opinion as well. Mix it up. So when you are taking your notes, be sure that you are integrating at some point your lecture notes with your textbook notes, with perhaps conversations that you have with other people. You want to make sure that your notes include all of that information, right? So a great way to do this would be to take your book notes on your laptop, but handwrite your lecture notes and go back later and integrate those lecture notes into your typed book notes by using a different color font or something of that nature. Number 8, check for errors. If you made a mistake, fix it. Cross-reference with someone else you know in the class. Like, hey, this is what I had down for the definition of matriarchy. What did you have? Be active in your learning, not passive. Again, speak up. If you didn't understand something, if you weren't able to jot something down, then make sure that you're actively making that known. Be vocal in the classroom. Don't be afraid to ask a question. So if you believe that, you know, there's not really clarity in the way that the instructor is laying something out, don't be afraid to say that. I'm not 100% clear. This is what I'm hearing. Is this correct? I will refrain from saying, could you repeat that? I don't get it, right? Always start with what you do understand, what you did hear, what you do know, and ask, is that the entirety of what you were trying to get across? Is that on track, etc.? Don't be afraid to be called on in class. It's okay if you get answers wrong. It's okay if you say something that other people don't agree with, right? But just the fact that you're interacting with the content means that you're thinking critically and is a positive. So, again, don't be afraid to be wrong. When questions are posed in class, they're opportunities to learn, not opportunities for people to show off what they know. Always ask for help. Instructors, professors, teachers are there in order to help you. Request clarification and be mindful that you have a rightful place in the classroom. It's your classroom. This is your course. This is your learning. So always keep that in mind. Make sure that you're getting out of your learning experience what you need. Again, come together. Each one teach one. Ask friends and classmates for help. Cross reference with them. Have study partners. You can make collaborative notes on Google Doc with a few people from the classroom, etc. You don't have to do this alone. And use all the resources available on campus, from the library and the books they have on record, using the databases for journal articles, computer labs, meeting rooms, and things of that nature. The tutors, make sure you're using all of the resources available because you paid to be here. Therefore, you want to get your money's worth. The internet is your friend, and not just for answers from Quizlet. You can use the internet as a resource to learn so much information. Please do not limit yourself to copying and pasting, aka plagiarizing information from other sources, but rather read about some interesting things and integrate those into your arguments. Now, this is going to seem like a no brainer. Complete all of your homework assignments, all of your in class assignments, all of your tests and quizzes, and all of your projects. So, what happens when you do extremely well on formal tests and quizzes but miss homework assignments, right? Here is a scenario where the first three items are homework assignments that were 10 points. You just didn't turn in. But number four was a quiz you got an A on. Five and six were exams you got an A on. You end up with a B minus in the class. What happens if you do extremely well on all your formal assessments, tests, and quizzes, but get half credit on homework assignments? You kind of just threw something together for the homework, but you studied really, really hard for the test. Here you get an 85. What happens if you do well on all formal assessments, and you do high quality homework assignments, submit them all on time? You get an A in the class, right? So we just want to be mindful. In these three examples, the quiz and exam grades stayed the same, but there was a 10-point difference in the final grade based on homework performance. So please do your homework assignment. The non-learning effect, as you can see, people tend to have a lot of confidence when they don't actually know what they're doing. So if you ever have taken a test and you're like, oh my God, that was so easy, I killed it, and then you come back, get your results, and you got a D plus, this is that effect at work, right? People who are overly confident oftentimes are so because they don't know what they're doing. And we find that people who are in the middle tend to have a more realistic idea about their actual performance. And once you reach peak expertise, you see that confidence begin to climb again. So when it comes to knowing how well you're doing at something, that involves metacognition. And metacognitive skills are something that we will talk about in this course. Metacognitive skills are the ability to think about how you're thinking. So intentionally thinking about how you think and learn. So what are some types of metacognitive questions that we can ask ourselves? You can say, what are the steps that I need to follow here? What do I already know about this topic? Where did I get stuck when trying to solve this problem? What is the assignment asking me to do? These are all very, very important things to do. The more metacognitive skills that someone has, the better their performance. So when you're reading things, when you're in a lecture or presentation and you're able to ask yourself, what am I absorbing? What am I not? What do I understand? Why do I understand it? What don't I understand? Why don't I understand it? Thinking about your own thinking in these types of ways will actually help your performance. So we've all been here, right? You're supposed to read before you come to class, but you don't. You'll figure everything out in the presentation of the lecture. Especially as you move forward in your education, independent thinking and learning is critical. You have to read and you have to prepare for your classes. Reading can be tedious though, so I suggest that you keep it simple when it comes to your reading. Don't try to cram and read 50 pages worth of a chapter in one sitting, right? Schedule everything. Set out an intentional time where you're going to begin your reading. Split your reading up into smaller sections and say, hey, I'm going to read for my history class 30 minutes on Monday, do some math homework for 45 minutes, and then the last thing I'll do is read the first section of my human growth and development book. So when you have these smaller 15 to 20-minute increments, you won't be so overwhelmed with the information that you're getting, and you'll actually be able to digest it. You also want to be consistent with these times that you make, right? Maybe you say, hey, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, those are my STEM nights. Tuesday, Thursday, those are my humanities nights. I don't do any work ever on Sundays. That's my day off. When you're reading, you want to ensure that you're reading carefully and attentively. It's great that we have audiobooks nowadays and that our computers can just read to us, but honestly, the amount of attention that you're paying when you're listening to something passively is not very high. So you want to ensure that you're reading and that you're being attentive while you're reading. Some things that people can do are read aloud. So take your time, read aloud, and make sure that you're actually reading every single word in a text. So here's a great example. You can read this, but none of the letters are arranged in a sensible way, right? So our minds fill gaps very quickly. But when our mind is filling gaps quickly, sometimes it can make mistakes, right? So when you're reading and you're skimming or you're reading rather fast, yes, it can seem like, oh, I understand, I get everything. But because of the way our minds work in filling holes, sometimes it can make mistakes or mix things up. So a great example of this is the Stroop test. Here, let's read from left to right each row. Red, blue, green, yellow, green, orange, pink, black, brown, blue, red, green, orange, black, blue. Easy. Here, though, the color of the actual text and the word are the same. What happens if we have to read the word, but the color of the text is different? Now, what if you try to say the color of the text but not read the words? You find that trying to pay attention and to say the color of the text is much harder than reading the words, which is harder than when the color and the word are the same. So while you're trying to say red because the color of the word is red, your mind is moving more quickly and automatically sees blue, the word, and will say blue. So again, when you're trying to interact with the learning material, you really want to make sure that you're being attentive. A great way to do this is to read, recall, write, and reassess. So when you read, recall, write, and reassess, you're actually able to take in information rather than have the information bounce off of you. Here's an example. I want you guys to read this, and then as soon as you finish the last word, I want you to jot down everything that you can remember without looking. Brazil is the most successful national team in the history of the World Cup, having won 5 titles, earning second place, third place, and fourth place finishes twice each. Brazil is one of the countries besides Argentina, Spain, and Germany to win a FIFA World Cup away from its continent. Brazil is the only national team to have played in all FIFA World Cup editions without any absence or need for playoffs. Brazil also has the best overall performance in World Cup history in both proportional and absolute terms, with a record of 73 victories and 109 matches played, 124 goal difference, 237 points, and only 18 losses. Traditionally, Brazil's greatest rival is Argentina. The two countries have met each other 4 times in the history of the FIFA World Cup, with 2 wins for Brazil, 1 for Argentina, and a draw. The country that played most against Brazil in the finals is Sweden, 7 times, with 5 wins for Brazil and 2 draws. You'll notice after you pause and write down everything that you can remember that you're actually able to remember a lot from small sections like that. So it's my suggestion, hey, when you're reading your textbook and you're in section 1, sub heading 1, you read those 5 or 6 paragraphs and immediately write down everything that you remember without looking at your text. Look over what you wrote, check and see if you missed anything. If not, go to the next section and do the same thing. Cognitive psychology has actually shown that when you read in small parts, write down everything you can and draw that information out, you're more likely to remember the information later. And this is compared to people who reread a text multiple times. Oftentimes people think, oh, I'm studying, I'm rereading the chapter, or I'm looking over my notes again. But actually, the best way to quote unquote study is to do something active, to write things out, to try to remember, to make mind maps and connections and things of that nature. So we talked a lot about what not to do, but what should we be doing and what is studying? So sometimes people complain about in class when you're doing the examples, things seem so sweet and easy. You do the homework, okay, it's a step up. But then when you get to the test, you have no idea what's going on, right? That's because people oftentimes will just redo problems, relook at notes, relook at the homework, instead of trying novel practice. Novel practice is the best thing that you can do in order to prepare. So yes, you want to review what you have, reorganize information, but you want to apply the concepts, the constructs, the content in a new way. Novel practice. So, yes, you can review your notes and reorganize notes and homework questions. Make sure pertinent information is next to pertinent information. But then you need to think of new questions like, how does this relate to X, Y, and Z? Come up with your own types of homework questions. If you had to create an evaluation based on this material, what would you add? Distributed practice. This means don't cram. Do a little bit of practice, a little bit of thinking every day. When you do practice across multiple time periods, you are more likely to be able to do that task again after being away from it for a long time. If you spend the same amount of time but just in one sitting, you'll perform worse at later points in time. Again, create and complete your own test and assessment. Think about things in a new way. And master test taking skills, especially when it comes to things like multiple choice. Answer what you know first and go back to what you don't know later. Don't get hung up on not knowing the answer to number 5 that you don't do questions 6 through 15, right? Do what you know first, come back later. Use the information from other questions to answer previous questions. Make sure that you're choosing the best answer, eliminating the least relevant answers first, and make sure that you can justify the choices that you make. And again, I would love for you guys to collaborate, especially in this class. Work together, study together, take notes together. There's no reason why you have to go through everything by yourself. Thanks so much, guys. Please let me know if you have any questions or if you need any assistance. I want you to be successful in this class, and I want you to perform at a high level. And I truly believe that making sure your study skills are on point will ensure that you end up with an A.